I could see the inspector getting closer, and I started to panic. I quickly closed my eyes, hoping he would leave me alone and not ask why I didn't have a ticket. But then I felt a tap on my shoulder. I tried not to move. But then in front of everyone, in the carriage, he said, "Wake up, Missy! You can't fool me!" I felt so embarrassed. I just started crying. He had his arms crossed and said if I didn't cough up the cash, he'd chuck me off at the next station. How could I have been so stupid to think I could ride the train for free? Between sobs, I begged him to let me stay on until my stop and apologized, saying I'd forgotten my purse. But he wouldn't budge. Someone said, "Hey, don't speak to her like that. Have you never forgotten your wallet before? It happens to all of us." Well, the inspector didn't like that at all. As soon as the train pulled in to the next station, he ordered us both to get off the train. As soon as we were on the platform, the guy turned to me and said if I followed him, he'd help me. I was in a rush to get to my friend's party, so I said okay. Little did I know the mess I was about to get caught up in. And I mean, what was I supposed to do? We were in the middle of nowhere, and I had no money. Plus, my cell phone had 0 battery, and my friend would be waiting. The guy seemed friendly and told me his name was Travis and that he'd call us a taxi. He looked around 17, just like me, but he clearly came from money. He was head to toe in designer gear, and I looked so scruffy next to him. The taxi eventually arrived and we climbed in. I was about to give the driver my friend's address when I realized I couldn't even see the driver. Then I heard the clicking sound and the doors all locked. I turned to Travis and he was grinning at me. He then leaned in close to me and said, "I'll take you wherever you need to go. But first, I need a favor. That's only fair, right? A favor for a favor? Oh, and don't worry, I'll throw in some cash too. You'll never have to sneak onto a train again." Oh my God. What was this? I told him to let me out and he said it wouldn't take long and that he wasn't going to hurt me. I was freaking out and started banging on the screen between us and the driver. But he just ignored me. Was I being kidnapped? I didn't understand. He just helped me on the train and now he was blackmailing me? What kind of a sicko does that? The next moment, the car stopped and I almost fell off my seat. He said we'd arrived at the party and that all I had to do was put on a fancy dress and pretend to be someone else. He handed me a bag with a designer dress inside and even a box of jewelry. So he'd planned this? I told him there was no way I was doing this. And then he just looked at me and said, "What if I throw in $10,000? Sure you don't want to join me? It's just a party." I peered out the window and noticed we were parked outside a mansion. Who even lived like this? Before I could tell him no again, he told me to put on the dress and join me outside. I know I should have just run, but guys, it was $10,000. For a 17-year-old, that's like winning the lottery. Plus, the dress was out of this world. I put it on and opened the door. Suddenly, 2 older people came running towards me and Travis grabbed my hand and whispered into my ear, "Your name is Essie. You're studying to be an actress, and we met 2 months ago. Got it?" Well, I didn't have time to reply because the next moment, the older woman was coming right up to me and said, "You must be Essie. We've heard so much about you. Come and meet the whole family." Then she grabbed my hand and I realized she must be Travis's mom. This was insane. I felt like I entered a parallel universe. The house was out of this world. You could basically smell the money. And there were celebs there. I wished my phone weren't dead so I could take some pics. My friends would never believe I'd been at a party like this. There were even butlers. I felt pretty awkward. Everyone was looking at me, and I even saw some people whispering. Clearly, they knew I didn't belong at a party like this. I asked one of the butlers where the bathroom was, but as I was following him, Travis appeared and asked where I was going. Then he told me to stay by his side and that I wasn't to run off or he'd take the money back. This was so messed up. Everything in the house looked spotless. So when Travis wasn't looking, I quickly licked the mirror. It just looked so clean and I wanted to leave my mark on this house. But someone saw me. I moved away from the mirror and pretended I'd been checking my makeup. But the girl came right up to me and said, "So, you're actually real? We thought Travis was just making you up." Then she smirked at Travis before walking off. Ugh, who was that girl? Travis looked embarrassed and said that was his brother's girlfriend and that she was the devil. But it seemed like his brother and sister were worse. They kept looking at us and didn't even introduce themselves. Travis told me they were awful, but all I could think was how awful he was. Who basically kidnaps a girl and lies to their family like this? As the night went on, I'd had enough. These people were all so fake. They would smile at Travis and compliment him on his clothes and tell him how pretty I was. Then as soon as we moved away, they'd talk about how he was such a loser. I didn't feel comfortable at all, so I walked off when his back was turned. I found the bathroom and decided to climb out the window. But then something awful happened. I got stuck. My dress got caught and I thought I was going to have to shout for help, but then someone grabbed my feet. Where do you think you're going? It was Travis. He told me he'd give me another $10,000 if I just stayed a little longer and posed for a few photos with him. Well, I was literally stuck, so what was I supposed to do? He pulled me down and we went back out to the party, just in time for his dad to make a speech. But as his dad was talking, suddenly, Travis's brother grabbed the mic and said he had something to say. Then he got down on one knee and proposed to his girlfriend. Then in front of everyone, he turned to Travis and said, "You snooze, you lose, bro." Everyone laughed and I didn't understand. I turned to Travis, but he was nowhere to be seen. Travis's sister saw me looking around and came up to me and said, "Why are you dating my brother? He's such a loser." That's his ex up there, by the way, getting proposed to. At least she's with someone better now. Travis doesn't deserve to have a girlfriend. Honestly, I didn't understand why his family was being so cruel to him. He seemed like such a nice guy, especially after he saved me on the train like that. I'd be stuck in the middle of nowhere if it hadn't been for him. I had to make sure he was okay, so I went outside to find him and noticed him sitting under a tree. He looked really upset, and when I asked if it was because his ex was now engaged to his brother, he got so angry. He told me that this had been the dumbest idea ever, and he just wanted to get some attention from his parents. But once again, his brother had stolen the limelight. He then wrote me a check and told me I was free to go, and that the driver would take me home. All I could think about was how annoyed my friends would be that I missed the party. There was no way I could tell them where I'd been. The car pulled up, and I got in just as Travis's mom came running out. She started shouting at Travis, asking him what was wrong with him and how come he couldn't keep a girlfriend. Then his dad was there and said, "Another one bites the dust." When I got home, I had like a million texts from my friends, and they said I'd missed out on the best party ever. Well, I had a $20,000 check in my pocket, so I didn't feel so bad. I pretended I'd been sick, and that's why I hadn't made it. Over the next few days, though, I found myself wondering about Travis. His family was horrible to him. No wonder he paid me to pretend to be his girlfriend. The next weekend, I decided to wear the dress to my friend's birthday. When I walked in, everyone was staring at me, and I lied and said my cousin had lent it to me. I felt like $1 million in it, and all my friends said it was the hottest dress they'd ever seen. I went a bit crazy, posting loads of photos of me in it, even tagging the designer. But I shouldn't have done that because the next day, I got a DM from the designer asking me where I got the dress. She even accused me of being a thief. So I told her my friend had given it to me. But then she didn't reply again. I started to panic. What if Travis had stolen the dress? I tried to search for him on social media, but couldn't find him anywhere. I hadn't even gotten his number. Then, a few hours after messaging her, my friend called me and said I was such a liar and that I hadn't been sick the weekend before. I'd been mingling with celebs. I asked her what she was talking about. Then she told me to check my phone. There was a link and I clicked on it. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was the online magazine and there was a whole article about me. The headline was Travis and his fake girlfriend. And there were photos of Travis and I, and even one of me looking around in awe at the size of the mansion. I was shaking so much I could barely read the article. It said how Travis had bought me to get back at his brother for now being engaged to his ex, and that the dress I was wearing was designed by his ex's best friend. I felt humiliated. I posted photos all over my Instagram without even thinking, and now they all knew I was actually called Paula, not Essie. Now, they'd be even more cruel to Travis. I had to get in touch with him somehow. Honestly, I spent the whole week looking at photos of us. And I'm not gonna lie, I became a bit obsessed. I mean, we just looked so cute together. And once my friends forgave me for lying to them, they said I had to find him and get him to be my real boyfriend. That week of school dragged by, and finally the weekend came. On Saturday morning, I figured he'd be at home, so I took a taxi over there. I definitely wasn't ready to go back on a train, and all that money was burning a hole in my pocket. When the taxi dropped me off, there was a security guard standing there, and he said I wasn't allowed in. I told him I was here to see Travis, and he just said, "No, you are not allowed on this property." I'm not proud of this, but I even offered him some money, and he told me that if I didn't leave, he'd call the police. It was so frustrating, but I wasn't going to give up. I walked along the street, and that's when I noticed there was a gap in the hedge. I could totally crawl through there, I thought. I waited until there were no cars going by, and then I squeezed through. Of course, I got a bit stuck, and then I felt something wet on my face. I almost screamed, but then I saw it was just a dog. Well, the next second, it started barking, and I basically had to sprint all the way up to the house. The dog was chasing me, and I had bits of the hedge all over me. I looked like a crazy person. Then I heard the security guard. He was shouting after me, but I figured all I had to do was reach the house and find Travis. I kept looking back to see if the security guard was going to catch up to me. And the next second, I lost my footing and went flying right into the pool. The dog jumped in after me, and when I came up to the surface, Travis's whole family was standing there looking at me, and they did not look impressed. But instead of helping me out, they just started panicking about their precious little puppy. Travis's sister was even crying, saying her poor puppy would drown. And I tried to tell her that actually poodles are a breed of dog that can swim, but I might as well have been invisible. I swam over to the side and climbed out, and that's when I noticed Travis was nowhere to be seen. I walked towards his family, but they were busy with the dog, so I tapped his mom on the shoulder and asked her where he was. And she started shouting at me, saying that I was a disgrace and not welcome at their house. She asked what I wanted, and then told me Travis had moved out after embarrassing the whole family by lying to them and paying me to pretend to be his girlfriend. I don't know why, but I suddenly told her we really were dating. I mean, at least in my mind, we would be soon. But she wasn't listening to me. She already called the security guard over, and he was ordered to escort me to the gate. I looked like a drowned rat, but I was determined to find Travis. I begged the security guard to give me his address, and he said only if I was still offering money. So I quickly paid him $100 and called another taxi. The whole way there, I practiced what I was going to say to him, that even though I didn't really know him, and he was pretty much a stranger, I just couldn't stop thinking about him. When the taxi dropped me off, I was still soaking wet, but I didn't care. I walked right up to his door and knocked. His place was almost as big as his parents' house, and I just couldn't believe a 17-year-old could be this rich. I was so impatient to see him, so when the door opened and someone else was standing there, I almost cried. I must have gotten the wrong address. I started to walk away, but the guy standing there said, "I recognize you. Are you looking for Travis? And, why are you all wet?" As soon as he said Travis's name, my heart started racing. Then he told me to wait in the garden, and he'd go get Travis. But he seemed annoyed, like I'd interrupted something. I was pacing back and forth in the garden, going over what I was going to say, when Travis appeared. He looked so embarrassed to see me, and he couldn't even look me in the eye. Then he said, Paula. And he went on to apologize for everything and said he understood if I was mad at him. I almost wanted to laugh. I told him I wasn't mad at all and that actually there was something I wanted to tell him. He started smiling and I could see he was relieved. Then he invited me in and asked what it was I wanted to tell him. But that guy who answered the door was just standing there watching us, and it was super awkward. I said it could wait and I'd tell him later. And then he said, "Okay, great. Well, why don't you join us for lunch? My boyfriend is the best cook ever." Excuse me? I looked from Travis to the guy, and my jaws were literally hanging open. Oh my god, Travis was gay! Travis just started laughing and said he thought I'd probably figure it out by now, and that he was so sorry for using me. He just wasn't ready to tell his family yet. Then I realized who his boyfriend was. It was the butler from the party. I told him I had to go, and the butler boyfriend said he'd call me a taxi. It was like he couldn't wait to get rid of me. But Travis ran after me and said, "But we were going to do a Disney movie marathon. Maybe even some karaoke." Well, I decided to stay and hang out in the end. I would just forget I ever had feelings for him. Plus, I wanted to stick around to see what Travis's family would say when they found out what was really going on. He even asked me to pretend to be his girlfriend again, and I just laughed. No amount of money could convince me to do that again. I mean, you've met his family, right?